sister is one that doesn't vaccinate, and we always thought she was crazy. And now I see the light, and I see exactly what everybody's talking about. We're being poisoned, and it's all money, and it's just really sad what people are having to go through. My name is Rebecca Bollier, and I live here in South Carolina.
Amy Willard, Rebecca's cousin.
Rebecca's cousin, okay. And so the story is your story?
It's my story, yeah, unfortunately. My husband was vaccine injured through his military career. And it started, when I met him, he was very energetic, full of life. We have 3 kids. He was very active with them, and just a happy person, always willing to help everybody. Then he volunteered to go to Kuwait to pay off some debt that we had. And
so go back on that. So if you volunteer to go to Kuwait, you will get a pay rise or something? How does that work?
Well, he was in the Air National Guard at that point, so he volunteered to go for the Air Force, so he got paid active duty, which is more than Air National Guard pay. So,
your benefits
so yes, and our benefits, you get paid housing, just like if you were active duty, so we were able to make double what he normally made, so he volunteered to go, just on a 2-month deployment. And when he was over there, he was working out, he was doing really well the first month. I actually have emails from him saying that he's in the best shape of his life. He's never felt better. He's been working out. He was eating really healthy. And then it just all stopped after one day. He was on the treadmill. He passed out. They treated him for a sinus infection. He was very dizzy. He wondered if he had vertigo or a sinus infection due to the air there. Well, the day before, he had 3 vaccines. He had the anthrax vaccine, hepatitis vaccine, and a flu vaccine. And so he ended up being so ill over there, couldn't even stand up without the room spinning. His body was aching that they didn't send him home early, but they did not allow him to work anymore. So he basically laid in the tent until it was time to come home. He came home and was a completely different person. He was very skinny when he came home. He was very sad and didn't feel good, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. So they kept treating him for a sinus infection over and over like a 4-month period. People at work were telling him he was making things up. We have an air base in Bangor, Maine, where he was working, and he worked Monday through Friday there as a civilian for the military. They were like, you just want early retirement, or you just want disability, just because a lot of people will have something wrong, go deploy, come back, and say that they're sick, just to get out of the military. But my husband, this was his 18th year in the military, and he was going to stay for 20 years. So to make a long story short, he ended up with a lot of different illnesses. He had stomach problems, chronic fatigue. He had problems with his feet and body aches all the time. He ended up having his gallbladder removed. He tested positive for ANA in his blood, which indicates an autoimmune disease, but they couldn't determine which one it was. He had pancytopenia. His white blood count was very high, showing that he was fighting an infection, which I couldn't find where. So they removed his gallbladder. He has 1 kidney because prior to this he donated a kidney to his brother who had a kidney disease. So the kidney that he has is enlarged, and the kidney level is high, and his liver is enlarged as well. And then he had a bone marrow test because they still couldn't figure out what was wrong, and he has an M spike in his bone marrow, which is not normal, so he has to have another one of those. They have removed tons of precancerous polyps from him. What else? There's a lot.
How long ago did this happen?
This has been 3.5 years now. And so he ended up being medically discharged from the military, very depressed, because he thought things were in his head for a very long time. It has wreaked havoc on the family. Depression. They diagnosed him with PTSD and what they call Gulf War syndrome, which is what
Did they
we
actually
believe is a
say
cover-up.
He has Gulf War syndrome.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. And we saw an anthrax specialist. Her name is Myrtle She was a doctor out of Mount Desert Island in Maine. And she believed it had to do with anthrax. We went on tons of food-based diets to try to see if there was anything that we could eliminate to make him feel better. He has seen doctors in Boston, doctors in Texas.
How old is your husband?
He will be 39 October 18th.
And can he work?
He is 80% disabled, and he's working part-time at a golf course just to get out of the house because he was doing the stay-at-home dad thing, which was not good for his morale at all. So he walks around and picks up golf balls. We moved here for the warm weather because we thought it'd be easier on his body and his sinuses, and it actually has been helpful moving to a warmer climate. But he still has lots of medical issues that are not going away and won't go away. We were told at the time that it was the vaccines, and it was because he got 3. He wasn't poisoned by anthrax.
Who told you at the time? Who told you?
A doctor in Texas. And it was through a military doctor. But it was because he got 3 at one time is what we were told, and that your body builds up all these antibodies to fight vaccines, and sometimes when you get more than one, your body gets confused and starts fighting against itself. I don't know if that's true.
Did this doctor put it in writing or just tell you that?
Just told us this. And then he had to go before a military panel because he actually earned his Master Sergeant stripe while he was sick, but they wouldn't give it to him because he was on a medical leave. So they retired him as a tech sergeant, which is less pay. The anthrax specialist that we saw told us that the military has given vaccines that have expired. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what we were told. But he has problems with just about everything, and a lot of it now is mental, and all of his physical ailments are there and they're real, but the thing I think that affects him more is the mental things, like he can't play football with the boys, he doesn't have energy to do anything ever, just gaining weight because he can't exert himself in any way, not being able to work, feels like a loser because he's always worked his entire life.
Oh, guy.
It's just been a lot depression wise. He started gambling, drinking, self-medicating. Things are a lot better than they were. He sees a counselor at the VA, and goes to Gamblers Anonymous. These are all behaviors that never, I was married to him for 7 years before this started, where none of this was ever an issue for him. So it's just been a long road that has spiraled into many more things because of the health problems, that he wasn't given the option whether he wanted to have the anthrax vaccine or not. And at the time there were 7, and he only had 1. He only had the first one, and now he is not allowed to have any vaccines. So he's
tough for you.
vaccine
Very
sensitive.
tough for you.
Yeah, and confusing because, so then I started, we have 3 children, so I started vaccinating, 1 vaccine at a time, but no flu vaccine, just 1 at a time. And then this past spring, my son, to get into 7th grade, had to have the Tdap vaccine, and he ended up feverish, and he had a very bad reaction to it. It was a huge, golf ball sized ball on his arm for about a month, and I said, I'm never getting another vaccine ever again.
Well, we're really, really sorry, and people are saying thank you to him for his service, and this is
Thank
sorry
you.
that the military treated him so badly. Have you signed your husband's name on the back?
Yes.
This
Yes, she
morning.
did,
Well
and my brother-in-law's name as well. He's also vaccine affected. He lives in California. He's still currently in the Air Force. some similar issues that my husband has, but
he may have to be vaccinated again, she told me, his wife, in order to stay in.
yeah.
They're trying to get a doctor's note right now.
And their kids are home because they're not vaccinated, and she can't send them to school, so they're not allowed to choose. Where here, we're lucky enough that we can get a waiver as of now if we want to. So
Thank you, both of you, so much.
we're happy to find you and be able to share.